Welcome to the Teachers on Fire podcast, where 21st century educators come to share, learn, and be inspired. We believe in the growth mindset, creativity, communication, critical thinking, collaboration, and strategic uses of education technology. Our mission is to share news and views from teachers who are crushing it in the classroom and making a difference for learners everywhere. I'm your host, Tim Cavey. Let's jump into today's episode. Welcome to this episode of the Teachers on Fire podcast. Today, I am thrilled to speak with Cordell Ware. Cordell, thanks so much for coming on the show today. Are you ready to talk education?
Always.
Awesome. Cordell, tell us, first of all, about your current teaching situation, your location, your school, community context. Set it up for us.
For sure. So I live and work in Fort St. James, British Columbia, which is about 2 hours northwest of Prince George. And I work at a high school there, Fort St. James Secondary School. And we're located on the traditional territory of the Candidly First Nations. We have about 300 students at our school. 65% identify as Indigenous. And our community is pretty small. We have just under 2,000 people in the town. And it's industry town. We have 2 mills and 1 mine and a lot of forestry. So yeah, I work at the high school. It's in kind of a different learning space. It's 8 to 12, and it's students doing a number of things. Basically, this learning space has kind of changed over the years. It's been a lot of different things, like an independent learning center. It's been called the step room. And administration kind of asked me to, again, kind of reshape and change it. Okay. Just to kind of move away from this idea that students kind of viewed the room as kind of a negative place to be, right. or oh, students, you're a student who goes there, right? And it kind of created this otherness. So the idea was, okay, let's try and remove that. Let's reinvent the space so any one of our 300 students would be in there, and that would be okay, and everyone's in there, and kind of more of a place you go to really learn, not just a place you go when things aren't going right. So kind of a place to go when things are going well. So in doing that, kind of reinvented it. We're calling it doing things with soul. So the idea with that is student ownership is the S and the O of that. And then uncapped learning is the U and the L. Okay. So doing things with soul. So the idea is do things with everything you are. And to do that, students need to have more control. They need to be able to kind of guide their learning and choose what they want to do. But then as the educator in the room, I also kind of have to not set up any limits. Right. So that's the uncapped part. So it's this really new partnership that we're trying to work out at our school. And so I'm in there, and students are retaking a course maybe they've not passed in the previous semester, or they're doing a senior humanities that we offer, which is like social justice 12 and law 12, comparative cultures, comparative religions. And students could be doing an online course through eBus, like graphic design or family studies.
Okay.
Yeah.
That sounds phenomenal. I really like that acronym, SOUL, Student Ownership with Uncapped Learning. I'll have to remember that one. Tell us, Cordell, about a low moment that you faced in your teaching or education career and how you overcame it. And look, we don't like these moments. We all hate them, but they happen, don't they?
Yeah. I like reading this question. I searched, and I was like, there are low moments. Mm-hmm. And they are pretty clear in your mind. And I kind of was thinking about, like, what's the one low moment? Okay. And it was kind of tough, because I feel like I've also been so fortunate that there's a lot of good moments that often they so outweigh the low ones that you kind of forget about them. But I actually kind of thought back to practicum. Okay. And so I went to VIU on Vancouver Island in Nanaimo, but I always wanted to do practicums in rural placement. So I actually did my first one in Gold River on the island. And it was such a good experience. Like, I was so fortunate. I had an amazing sponsor teacher. She's down in Victoria. She's rocking it. Just doing amazing stuff with First Nations knowledge and principles of learning. She's crushing it. And I had such a good experience there. The students were great. The staff were great. But the low moment came when practicum was over. Right. When you had to leave, because, you know, when you're in your ed degree, every professor says relationship is the most important thing, like it's that's all you hear, right?
Yeah.
And then you go to these schools and you build that relationship, you build that foundation, that trust, and then you leave. And in my case, I physically got in a car and drove away. Mm-hmm. And it was a 4-hour drive home, and the whole time I was like, I should be excited, like I should be really happy right now. I just passed my first practicum. Like, this is my dream. I want to be a teacher. And the whole time I was thinking of certain students and how the rest of their year was going to look, and how they would graduate and what they would do after graduation. And that leaving was just like, it just leaves you like so empty. Mm-hmm. And then the sad thing is you do it all again. So my next practicum, I went to Burns Lake, BC. Okay. And same thing, invested, had a great experience. And this time it was a 13-hour drive home, where I got to think about how this sucks. Like, leaving sucks. Like, but I guess, how do I get over it? Like, now I'm in Fort St. James, and practicum's not going to end. I'm not in practicum. Right. I'm a teacher, and I get to decide where I go and where I stay. Right. And, all my friends ask me, like, when are you moving back to the island, Cordell? Like, when are you coming back? Mm-hmm. And my first year, I said, I don't know, like maybe a year or two. But by the end of the year, I was like, I can't go. I got to see these grade 8s graduate. Yeah. And then the next year came, and then when those grade 8s were really cool, and I wanted to see them graduate. and my friend just asked me, I'm back on the island for spring break. He just asked me, so when are you coming back? I said, this new group of grade 8s, they're really cool. Like, so I think what's great is I don't have to leave. Now I kind of have that agency, that choice that I can stay in. I think that's how I got over those low moments.
Yeah, that's really, really important. And you're absolutely right. We are called to build relationships with our learners, and it does get difficult on some level emotionally year after year when we have to sort of pass them on. We're still called to give each year, aren't we? Cordell, what excites you about education today? This could be a big picture thing like technology and education and the way it's changing opportunities, or it might be a micro level thing like a favorite classroom activity.
Okay, so kind of thinking about that big picture, I just feel like we're in a time in BC of change. Education is growing and developing, and kind of in this time of shift. So you see that with the new curriculum that's coming out, the drafts that are formed, the embracing of Indigenous principles of learning. You're seeing that with like this integration of new and innovative technology in the classroom. Like, on all levels, you just see this massive shift in BC education, which is, that to me is exciting as a new teacher and working in BC. And then kind of a more specific and personal exciting thing in education right now is I'm feeling like my role as an educator is kind of changing. So from that idea of, okay, I'm the teacher, I have the knowledge, I'm going to create the assignments, I'm going to create the criteria, I'm going to mark them. That's kind of how I started. That's kind of where my career began. And then this year has just been like such a meaningful shift away from that to I don't even feel like I'm a teacher anymore. I just feel like I've been calling myself like a professional learner. Because I just feel like I get paid to learn. When you're co-creating criteria, they're learning, they're having huge learning, but you are too, because you're learning how to do that better. Right. At the beginning of the year, I was so bad at co-creating criteria because I just didn't know when to shut up. Like, I didn't know when to just let them create, because I'm so used to being the one who gets to do that. And so this new semester, I got this like fresh start, and it's just gone so much smoother, where I'm just I have faith that, hey, this is going to work out. It has, and I just need to kind of take that step back, kind of release some of that control. And the results have been super cool. So it's just exciting that I feel like it's working, and that like I feel better about what I'm doing as an educator right now.
That sounds incredible, man. That is amazing. Tell us about one education leader that maybe we should be following on Twitter, and explain why.
So I'm always following Shelley Moore.
Okay.
And what she's doing with inclusion is huge, especially in our small school. I find like a lot of what she's posting is relatable. but someone more locally to the school district in the north here that I work in is Michelle, and then it's M-G.
Okay.
And she's this amazing educator in our district. She does inquiry and literacy support for our district. And she's helped me a ton with my master's inquiry this year.
Okay.
But also she's constantly posting on Twitter just exciting ways that teachers and educators in our district are approaching education. Like I said, there's this huge shift in BC right now, and it's just really cool to see that she's kind of documenting how our district is doing that. And it's just kind of encouraging to see it. That's like, hey, down in another community in our district, this is happening, and that means it can happen here too.
I love that. I love the global community that Twitter creates, and I'll definitely look Michelle up for sure.
Yeah, and I'm super new to Twitter. I was really excited when you started following me because my followers doubled. It went from 1 to 2, so it's just so exciting.
Oh man, I did not notice your numbers were in that range, but yeah, welcome, man. Welcome.
No, I just had the old phone, like, and I had such limited space for apps, right. And I got a new phone. Now I can finally join social media.
That's hilarious. If you weren't teaching or working in education, what would be your next choice for a career path?
It would be something to do with scuba diving.
Okay.
100%.
Yeah.
Like when I saw this question, I was like, boom, it was the only question I didn't have to really think about and kind of reflect on. Scuba diving, boom, that's hitting the buzzer. That's my answer. Just so much peace when I scuba dive. You know, the vibrant marine life, the pressure from the water, that near silence is addicting. Like, you can't get enough of it.
Now, coming from someone who's on the outside looking in, I mean, is there any kind of a fear of suffocation, or how do you manage that?
You know, that's a really interesting question, because that's usually the go-to question when I talk about, hey, I'm going scuba diving.
Right.
Is people like, oh, isn't that kind of scary? And I don't know if I'm just like not with it enough to be scared of it. It just doesn't come into my mind. Yeah. Maybe I'm, I don't know. It's just, maybe the love of it just outweighs, and I don't think about how scary it is.
Amen.
But
that's a good place to be. That's a good place to be. You've just jumped in with 2 feet. You fully embrace it, and the heck with the risks, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Tell us about a personal habit that contributes to your success.
Yeah, I gotta say, I think this is the most interesting question, and I just want to continually ask people this question because I think it's so good.
Okay.
Because people must have like really interesting little things they do, right?
Absolutely.
Mine. I hope you don't think it's too weird. Like,
the weirder the better.
I'm kind of setting myself up here. So every morning, I have and eat this really big salad for breakfast.
Okay.
So like spinach and mixed greens and tomato and cucumber, chickpeas, black beans, sometimes a vegan protein substitute.
Okay.
And, balsamic vinaigrette. And there I am, like, doing gym supervision in the morning, eating my salad. And the students just think I'm bizarre. Like, what are you eating?
Right.
Like, what are you doing? What is that? It's like, that's an avocado. And they're like, why? And it's just a really cool way for me to just get ready for the day. I find it wakes me up. I'm like full all day, so I don't like get the hangry thing going. Because if I'm hungry, I'm just not a nice individual.
Oh yeah.
So yeah, it's good. It's this routine I do. Like, I don't know. It's ever since I've started doing it last year, it's been a really positive thing. And I know it's weird. I get the looks.
Well, your body definitely thanks you. I have no doubt about that.
For sure.
Share one edtech tool that you love using in your classroom or your day-to-day work.
Yeah, so this really recent, a professor from UMBC and VIU, Deb Cohen, actually lent me these cubelets. Have you heard of these? These are like little robots.
Okay.
So they're cubes, and each cube does a little bit of a different operation. So some create Bluetooth connectivity so you can connect to your phone. There's an app, and then some have wheels and lights and sensors. Instead of them kind of choosing to be just simply on their phone for social media. They're on their phone because they're kind of playing around with the cubelets. Okay. So yeah, it's cool because it comes with the box and it tells you different ones you can set up that they have kind of preset. But then some of the students have started to take it further, and they're kind of like testing the limits of what these cubelets can do, it's kind of cool to watch.
That is very cool. I've played around with the Spheros a little bit.
Okay. Yeah.
And they have that phone integration as well. So it's good to see these edtech / makerspace / robotics companies moving in that direction, because, hey, let's face it. I mean, more and more of our kids have mobile devices of their own every year. Yeah. And so why not, right?
Exactly. And just to see it in that positive way, right? I think so much about the phones in the media, like kids with phones, it's very negative, but it is. I don't know. I think the space you create too, and the learning environment, for me this year, it's been really positive. It's a way for them to do research, kind of start to investigate things. So yeah, it's been pretty positive.
Recommend one book that maybe you've been reading lately, or one of your all-time faves, and tell us why you recommend it.
Yeah, I just finished The Salmon People, by Hugh W. McIrville, and it is so cool. It's written in 1967.
Wow.
And so this book's got some years on it, and essentially it's a historical account of the West Coast in BC, and it's kind of seen through the eyes of salmon. And so he's so ahead of his time. He looks through the eyes of indigenous cultures and groups on the West Coast, and kind of how they approached and harvested salmon, and the tradition around that, and the respect that was there. And then as time moves on, he talks about the canneries that get set up, and how the fishing industry kind of got commercialized, and how that started to change not only the landscape of BC in a very visible way, but also how people in BC started to view salmon. Now it was a big dollar sign. And then, goes in and gives voice to the Japanese immigrants who came to Canada, were really productive in West Coast fishing, but then were interned for World War II and lost their vessels and never got them returned. And then kind of ends the book with the environmental concerns that we still have today, and about the sustainability of not only salmon, but all marine life here on the coast.
That sounds so fascinating, and you're right, so forward thinking for his time. So
yeah, 1967. He was a very astute individual. It's pretty powerful to read. His language as well is just spot on.
Recommend one podcast and tell us why you love it.
Oh, it's so hard to pick one. So like I listen to This American Life, like when I'm doing dishes and when I'm cooking, or like Freakonomics. I just listened to a great episode they had about how when helping hurts. Okay. This idea that some of the services we provide actually do harm to people, and we're not really measuring that. So we should start to pour money into researching the impact of these services that we just assume will help, but maybe don't. And then one that constantly love, listened to it on the plane actually when I was flying home, TED Radio Hour. They take like 3 or 5 TED Talks on the same theme, put them together, and kind of pull out that 5 minutes from the TED Talk that's really powerful. Okay. And then the host actually talks with those individuals who gave the TED Talk, and kind of asks those questions that we're all thinking when we watch a TED Talk, like how did you come to that conclusion, or where do you get that information, or what do you really mean by that? And he actually asks those questions. You get to hear those responses. So that's, yeah, those 3 are always playing on my phone.
Good recommendations. Thank you. And right on that same theme, how about a YouTube channel? Maybe one that you enjoy, or one that you use in your classroom?
Yeah, one to check out right now is actually School District 91's YouTube channel. Didn't have too much on it before, but they've just uploaded a ton of great footage from educators around the district, what they're doing, the inventive things they're doing, what's happening in their practice and how it's shifting, and why they love where they work. It's definitely something to check out.
We will do so. Just for fun, what are you watching on Netflix right now?
I just finished On My Block. It's the one. It's the 4 teens. They're trying to make it through high school, but they also live in like a really rough neighborhood, and one of the members is affiliated with a gang, so that kind of causes tension in the group. And then of course it like ended only one season, and it was definitely a cliffhanger. So I hope they get on a second season there. And I'm always watching and rewatching The Office or Brooklyn Nine-Nine.
Right.
So yeah, when you go back to teaching low moments, usually the best fix for me is watching an episode of The Office.
Got to get those good laughs in.
Yeah, man.
It's amazing how The Office is such a go-to for so many people.
Yeah.
Cordell, this has been so much fun, very illuminating. I'm going to enjoy going through my notes from this interview. What's the best way for listeners to follow you?
Well, now Twitter. So yeah, I'm now on Twitter. It's very exciting. And Instagram is kind of what I've had in the past, and I post a lot of the cool stuff happening in the classroom there.
All right. And on Instagram, just so we get your handle right, it's at skip_JM. Is that right?
You betcha.
Cordell, thank you so much. And you're crushing it out there. You bring so much energy to the practice. Really appreciate you. Thanks for doing this.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. This is really cool. And yeah, I just wish you the best, man.
Thanks, Cordell.
Cheers.
Thanks for listening to this episode of Teachers on Fire, where teachers come to share, learn, and be inspired. Please subscribe to the podcast, leave us a review on iTunes, and follow us on Twitter at Teachers on Fire. I'm your host, Tim Cavey, saying goodbye for now, and we'll catch you next time, right here on the Teachers on Fire podcast.